Good day, my relatives. Hello. I appreciate you being here today and joining me. My name is Renee Romanos. I'm Cheyenne, Southern Cheyenne from Oklahoma, and I appreciate the time that you're taking to share moments with me. And I'm hoping that we can respond to the comments. Feel free to ask questions. I'm trying to find a spot where I don't look all crazy. Um, Anyway, I am looking forward to learning with you and from you. And I hope that you enjoy what we're going to talk about today, which is how to be a peaceful protester. There are a myriad of protests. Oh, I got to show you guys first off. I got to show my cool shirt, Native Wellness Institute, Grandma Up. Yeah, that's what it's all about. Taking care of our children, taking care of our grandchildren, being there for future generations, walking a path that we're proud of and that our children can follow and be safe. So, as many of you know, I am an activist and I have been an activist for decades, and thus the grandma part. So, I come by my experience in a good way. And in doing so, I have learned a great deal. I've been in protests since I was a young woman um, until recently. I would actually have taken part in the protests in Seattle, but it's a 2 hour drive, which is not a big deal for us, right? But it's COVID, and I'm also hampered by an injury. So choosing to be a peaceful protester has taken me to just being an online presence, an online protester, which is also one of your rights. It is your right to use the internet to express your First Amendment rights. Your opinion is valuable. Your opinion is important. And we must stand together, united, in order to um, there's something behind me. In order to do good in the world, we've got to stand together. So let's talk about what that looks like. In the words of our ancestors and of our relatives, our esteemed relatives, Gandhi said the following: nonviolence is the greatest force at the disposal of mankind. It is mightier than the mightiest weapon of destruction devised by the ingenuity of humanity. So he demonstrated that and by leading a march of tens of thousands of people to defy British rule in India, colonialism. As we all know, it has wreaked havoc all over the world. So eventually, India did throw off British rule, and Gandhi has said repeatedly that he was not alone in seeking this. Throughout our world history, people have stood up together against, have resisted against the colonialism being forced upon us in India, in Africa, all across the world. A few years back, my husband and I took a trip and we were able to tour Windsor Castle. Windsor Castle is quite lovely, it's beautiful, but in their displays, they carried things from all over the world. And among those displays are the, how do I put this? The regalia of a king, his armor. So they had his suit of armor, which was very unique and beautiful and wonderful. But they had it because they had deposed him and they had killed him and they had taken over his country. So unfortunately, I don't remember the name of his country. I just remember being appalled that colonialism has wreaked so much havoc throughout the world, and that at Windsor Castle they brag about it. You know, this is what we have. They used to say the sun never sets on the British Empire. Well, thankfully, that's no longer true. And that didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen easily. It took people protesting, it took people resisting, and resistance takes many forms. So I recall being in a protest against the Washington football team years ago, and we were sequestered behind a fence, and someone came out after the game as people were pouring out of the stadium, and one European American yelled at us, "Go back to your own country." And we looked at each other and we started laughing. And I yelled back, "Go back and get another beer." So it's okay to protest with humor. In fact, I highly encourage it. Sometimes people don't realize that the stances they're taking are so detrimental to other human beings. They don't understand that. So, although it's taken decades and dedicated work by many, many people, Suzanne Harjo most especially comes to mind in her work against the racist name of the Washington football team, but it's paid off. So they finally decided, okay, we need to change the name. And you see all these changes happening right now, and it's exciting and it's thrilling, and it's also it's like watching dominoes fall. Aunt Jemima, Land of Lakes Butter, all these companies that were profiting from racist imagery, Cleveland Indians, you know, who else? The Chiefs, the Braves, all those teams that have made a name on the blood and backs of our ancestors and our people today by perpetuating stereotypes. All those efforts, both legal and spiritual and in every other way possible, that people have protested against those things. It takes time to see results. My husband and I spent our honeymoon at Standing Rock just as the protests had only been going on for a short time. And that protest was not being broadcast over mainstream media. And I and a lot of other activists complained about that and made mention of that and the importance that we felt that media would bring to that, and how the actions, the illegal actions at Standing Rock played out was via social media. So again, the internet can be a valuable tool for you as a peaceful protester. The actions taken at Standing Rock, the illegal, the violence, the illegality of it, even drove away one particular group that had come in. Many sheriff's departments share a reciprocal agreement. When they're needed, they will go and support other police departments. And there was one police department at Standing Rock who, once they got there and saw what was happening, refused to participate, and they went home. So what we're seeing right now in Portland and in Seattle and across the country, really, we're seeing people who want systemic change, people who want to change the systemic racism that is in so much of our world, of our society. I had a discussion on Facebook recently with someone, and he kept asking me to explain systemic racism, and I kept saying, why don't you already know? And why do I have to school you? You're just as good at clicking on Google as I am. And there are a lot of answers on the internet. You can use the internet to educate yourself. or you can use the internet to promote conspiracy theories that are just wacko. So try to avoid those. So let's go to back to basics. There's a protest nearby and you want to go. So do your homework. Will you be safe? If you don't, if there's a possibility that you won't be safe, is it in your best interest to go? Are you elderly? Are you planning on bringing your children? As we saw recently in Seattle, a police officer deliberately sprayed a young girl, a little child, in the face with mace. So this was very disturbing, and I think that person should be fired. That's just my opinion. I'm not in charge of the police. And I think that our police officers should police themselves, and they should push these bad apples out, because there are so many good officers, and these bad officers make everyone look bad. And that's not what our society needs. Our society needs to return to what they used to say on police cars. They used to say to protect and to serve, and they no longer say that. So ask yourself, how can I change that in my community? There's a lot of things you can do, but I'm digressing. So let's go back to what we were talking about. You're going to go to a protest. Dress for the weather. Wear comfortable shoes. If you feel like you may not be safe, wear something protective underneath your clothing. Carry something. Trash can lid. There's a lot of things you can use, and be creative to protect yourself. So be cognizant of the safety or lack thereof that you may encounter. Should you wear goggles? You definitely should wear a face mask at all times because of COVID-19. But a face mask may help you, and a face shield may help you prevent being sprayed in the face. And there's other masks available too. So find what fits in your parameters of your pocketbook and be prepared. Unfortunately, during these times, we are seeing illegal actions by our federal government against peaceful protesters. And I understand there are some protesters who are not peaceful, but I also understand that there are infiltrators. And I'm not happy about that. But it is a tactic used by the federal government for decades. We saw it back when AIM was just starting up. We saw it in Wounded Knee. We saw it in San Francisco. We saw it in Standing Rock. We saw in Standing Rock, we saw a European man in camp with a rifle. We saw him approached in the river by a native man and urged to give up the rifle. And then we also saw the native man get arrested, not the man trying to create violence and hysteria. We saw native people behaving in a peaceful manner, walking down the road peacefully. We see a governor who passes a law that says you can run over people in the road. Now, I don't know about you, but that just seems to negate that whole life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness bit of the Constitution and of our founding fathers' desires to create a country that's more equitable. Although, as we all know, it wasn't equitable for natives and it wasn't equitable for blacks or Chinese or anyone who wasn't European American. So these are issues that we all have to think about. If you have questions, please post them up and I'll try to answer them. So you're at a protest. You have dressed appropriately. You're masked up. I would be wearing a mask if there was anyone else at home, but I'm the only one here. So maybe you should wear a helmet or a hat or something that might protect your head. Because as we've seen recently in Portland, the federal agents are shooting people in the face. And I saw a terrible picture yesterday of a mom who had been shot multiple times with rubber bullets, and she had bruises like this all over her body, that big. Awesome, awful, awful. So at the protest, are you alone? Are you with friends? Are you safe social distancing? We have to stay safe. We are a people who have protested since the very beginning. When we welcomed people to our land and when we saw that some of their actions were not beneficial to us, not safe for us, we have spoken out. So we continue to do so. And I am proud to have taken part in the protests that I've been in. I've been in some in Seattle. My daughter and I and several of my students from when I worked at Northwest Indian College took part in the John T. Williams raising of his totem pole. For those of you who don't know, John T. Williams was shot in the back by Ian Burke, Officer Ian Burke. I apologize for that. And he was a native carver. His family comes from BC, and they were all known for carving. He was carrying a piece of cedar in one hand and a legal-sized carving blade in the other. He was also largely deaf and living on the streets. Unfortunately, John was an alcoholic also. But everyone liked him. He was a good, kind person. And so there he is walking across the street in broad daylight, and Officer Burke pulled over and told him to drop his weapon. He didn't hear him. He was in the crosswalk, and Officer Burke shot him in the back and killed him. And other officers came and stopped, and nobody brought aid for several minutes for John, but it was too late. And unfortunately, the video of it is available on YouTube. It's very stark. It's very hard to watch. But people came together. John's brother, Rick Williams, decided not to act in a violent way, although people encouraged him to do so. And certainly it would have been understood. So Rick decided that his message was going to be one of peace. So he had a log brought down to the waterfront, and he got permission to carve that log to create a totem pole in honor of his brother. People came from all over the place, natives and non-natives alike, came and took part, watched, took pictures, watched as this totem pole came to completion. And when it was completed, people marched all the way to Seattle Center to lift this totem pole up in his honor and to celebrate a city coming together to create police reform and to honor one of our fallen brothers. That's an amazing legacy that Rick Williams has given to all peaceful protesters. I remember as we walked up the hill, because it was pretty steep, that people jumped on and off carrying, because the totem is carried in the center like this, and then there are poles that extend on both sides all the way along the length of the pole. So people would jump in. There would be like 4 or 5 people all along this one side, and we carried it. And so people along the side someone would look over and someone else would say, "Hey, do you want me to take over for you?" And people would just smoothly do that transition. I was towards the inside next to the pole, so it would not have been easy for me to do that. But fortunately for me, and I confess right here, there were 2 really tall men on either side of me. So for me to hold the pole was really for me just to touch the pole, because the pole was so high. I just kind of held it lightly, and the 2 guys next to me carried a lot. And then my daughter also carried, she carried the whole way. Several other people from Northwest Indian College, several other students were there. Tatiana Crawford, and other students. So it was really a memorable day, and it was an amazing day. To watch my students and my daughter and everyone else raise that pole was soul changing. I've been to many protests, and that's my most memorable one. We were at the Standing Rock protest in DC. We took part in that one. We took part in the Women's March. We actually came down in buses from the Oneida Nation when we lived in New York and took part. We were told we were there for a really long time because the staging area began in front of the National Museum of the American Indian. But because there were so many people there, hundreds of thousands of people, they ended up closing that route. And so we ended up taking a different route through DC. Again, just thousands of people, thousands and thousands of women standing together, several different tribes represented. It was just awesome to be a part of that, to walk shoulder to shoulder with people who share the same beliefs you do, people who want equity, people who want women to be treated with respect and kindness. That's what we all need. Those kind of actions are what we all need. Let me see if anybody has any comments. Oops, there we go. Holy cow, a lot of people have commented. I did not see this. Please do share. And I agree. Native Wellness Institute says, in order to do good in the world, we have to stand together. Absolutely, Heather. And by standing together, we're stronger. Samuel, I'm really proud of you for being a protester as well. That's fantastic. So, yeah, ACLU has a lot of information. Definitely wear comfortable shoes. Definitely. That's key to everything else. Don't wear anything you're not going to be comfortable in. So thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm really glad that you're here and that you're sharing in these moments. Native Wellness Institute is offering these Native Power Hours, and they're transformative. They're funny, they're informative, they're opportunities to learn from each other and with each other. And so I hope that you're taking part and you're sharing them with everyone that you know. Share them on your page. This is a great way for us to reach out to each other. And when you're going to your protest, so now we've shared some stories, and we've learned a little bit. So you're dressed comfortably, you have great shoes on that you could walk in for days, or you have your favorite moccasins and they've got inserts. There's a wonderful story in my family about my dad, Clifton Roman knows, who went to a protest, and when he came home, the protest got so crazy that he came home with only one moccasin. I've been at protests where I've seen somebody's flip-flops on the side of the road, and I'm like, whoa, I hope they have tough feet. They're going to need them. But do dress appropriate. If it's going to be a hot day and you have pale skin, then wear sunscreen. Well, wear sunscreen anyway. Let's prevent sun cancer or sun damage and skin cancer, because that can happen to anyone, right? So let's be cognizant of that. And so now you're dressed appropriately. You know what protest you're going. How are you going to get there? Where are you going to park? Know those things in advance. Where am I going to park? It seems so basic, but a lot of people forget, and then you waste a lot of time driving around. You miss the start of the protest. You miss the people who are speaking in the beginning. A lot of times there's people who speak at the end. In one particular protest that we went to was after a school shooting. And it was the, sorry. It was a terrible school shooting. And one of the speakers was from that school. And before she went on, young girl, before she went on, she got sick, but she still went on and she spoke to thousands and thousands of people. And there were like jumbotrons set up so we could see them clear back where we were. And the courage of those children um, was amazing. So the only good thing I see about COVID is that our schools are closed and our children are safe. So when you're at these events, make a sign. People are not going to know what your opinion is unless you carry a sign. A lot of times you'll be asked not to have sticks on your sign, anything like that. So you'll have to carry your sign. So remember, your arms are going to get tired, switch your sign, or carry it like this, or down below. If it's a big sign, that's okay. And you can write on the front and the back, so people behind you can see what your message is too. Your message can be funny, it can be sad, it can be a picture, it can be whatever you want it to be. Take your time. Because odds are someone's going to take a picture of it and it's going to end up on the internet, may end up on the news. So then it may reach more people. Being a peaceful protester means sharing your message. So what is your message? Is your message that you're tired of the Washington football team? Because like I said, I've been to plenty of those protests, and you can make those signs really funny. They're hilarious. So I was interviewed once after a protest against that team, and the interviewer, the newscaster, said to me, well, what name do you think they should have? And I said, how about the Washington Wasps? So I hope you all know what WASP stands for. I'm sure you do, so I won't bother telling you. So you're at the march, you found a good parking space, and it's a great parking space because you brought your friends and family with you. So you won't be alone. You'll be able to socialize with people you're already safe to be around. You've been socializing with these people throughout the pandemic, so you know they don't have it, and you know you don't have it. Stay together. Social distance from other people and encourage other people. Hey, we're just keeping our social distance. Thank you. Thank you. And make sure you keep a bubble around yourself. Sometimes people forget or don't care or are just rude. That would be my local grocery store. So we also, you have to think about your health doing these protests. Okay, so you're at the protest, you parked, you got your friends, you got your really cool sign, and the protest is going to go how many miles? Know that in advance. You have to have comfortable shoes. You have to be able to walk the entire way and back to your car. So if you're not in the best of health, or if you need a walker or you need a wheelchair, make sure you have those with you. Make sure you're capable of going that far. Now, did you bring food? Did you bring water? Basic supplies. Pack your granola bars. Pack your trail mix. Pack some fruit. You're gonna get hungry. So definitely be prepared. Carry a small backpack. We actually went to a protest to the Women's March. We didn't have anyone to watch our dogs. At that time, we had a German Shepherd puppy and my Great Dane. And so Miss Barra walks great on a leash, my Great Dane. So she was fine. And we actually had the puppy in a backpack. So he was hanging out like that on the back of the backpack. So Brian carried him. But we carried him the whole way. And they did great. So we also had to find places where they could relieve themselves. So that's another issue. Where can you go to the bathroom? Look for porta potties. If there's porta potties, just go, because you don't know how long it'll be until you find another one. So be very cognizant of that. So there you are. You've gone to the bathroom. You're in your comfy shoes. You're parked. Your family's with you. You got your sign. Your friends are holding it for you while you go to the bathroom. and you come out and remember that the bathroom lines are going to be really long. So again, a hat is helpful to stay cool. So all of these things there is just interesting, and it's practice. Sometimes you'll encounter people who don't want to be as safe as you are. My recommendation in that case is to stay away from them if possible, because people like that tend to draw the police, and you do not want to get drawn into that. So you're walking on, you're marching, you're carrying your sign, someone yells at you, someone calls you a name. Maybe they call you something that's a swear word. What do? Well, you keep walking. And you remember that our ancestors survived far more than that, and that we will survive far more than that. And we saw that certainly at Standing Rock, the violence perpetrated upon the peaceful protesters who came from all over the world, the water protectors, were subjected to horrific things that were illegal, immoral, unethical, and human rights abuses. But when you go up against a big dog, actually, which literally happened at Standing Rock, sometimes you're going to get bit. Sometimes people are going to say things that hurt you, or people are going to deliberately try to hurt you. In that case, to remain peaceful, to send your message in a powerful, compelling manner, you cannot respond. Hold your sign up higher, straighten your spine, lift your chin, look them in the eye, hold up your sign. Don't back down. Walk on. Keep walking. Keep going with the people who are with you. Many times at protests, you'll find, of course, people who are like-minded, people who feel the same way that you do. As we're seeing all across America right now, people are done with being mistreated. People are done with seeing their neighbors being mistreated. Thank you, Heather. So I mentioned this in another Native Wellness Power Hour. Science tells us something we already knew as Indigenous people, that in our DNA are the traumas that our ancestors suffered. So that trauma passed down to us in our DNA. You have to remember that also in our DNA is the courage, the strength, the resilience, the honor, the integrity, the power of our ancestors is also in our DNA. So when we speak up, their voices are echoing through us. Our voice will echo through future generations. So we have to stand up. We have to exercise our rights. And it is not easy. It is sometimes very difficult. So one of the issues that I have seen repeatedly is that of provocateurs, people who pretend to be protesters but are not, and they're trying to incite violence rather than send a message and incite change. I saw a video of a European American all dressed in black carrying a black umbrella. Many of you may have seen that. And he had some kind of baton or stick or something, and he was breaking windows, and it was daylight, and there were black people around him, and they were filming him, and they followed him, and they realized that he was a European American. He was not black. And so they literally chased him away. And I think his cowardice fueled his speed. But what a terrible person. And so it turned out that that person is part of a right-wing group um, trying to create a race war. And unfortunately, there are people who are buying into that. Heather, that is so perfect. We need to incite change. Absolutely, we do. Absolutely, we do. I'm going to cruise over to your comment and click like. I click love. Even better. So if y'all have questions, please ask a question. Feel free to do that. So this brings me, along to the same thing. The ACLU has said that for more than a decade now, Americans have repeatedly encountered illegal and unnecessary spying by local, state, and federal law enforcement on lawful and peaceful protesters. And targets of such surveillance have been on both the left and right and include anti-war, anti-death penalty, anti-abortion, animal rights activists, along with members of the Occupy movement. So the rights that we have are vital. So recently, according to ACLU, law enforcement's use of deadly force against unarmed members of minority communities and the recent revelations of mass surveillance of innocent Americans by federal intelligence agencies are detrimental to a free society. And I'm thankful that ACLU continues to work to fight to prevent such events, such spying, and to endeavor to hold government agents accountable when it does occur. So our ancestors have been standing up since time immemorial, since the first landing. And I want to share a couple of quotes with you. For those of you who've seen me do Native Wellness Institute, Native Wellness Power Hours, you'll know I frequently like to share the wisdom of others. I don't think I'm particularly wise. I just think I maybe tell good stories. So, when you are in doubt, be still and wait. When doubt no longer exists for you, then go forward with courage. So long as mists envelop you, be still. Be still until the sunlight pours through and dispels the mists, as it surely will. Then act with courage. So when you're at your protest and you're dressed appropriately and you're marching with your sign and your family and friends, whoever has come with you, and you're safe social distancing and you're wearing your mask and you're wearing a hat to prevent you from getting sunburned, remember, there are thousands, if not millions of people who feel the same way you do and who wish they could be there and they cannot. You need to remember that it's not just you. You're representing so many other people who maybe don't have the physical capability to go to a protest or don't have transportation, don't have gas money. It's too far for them to drive, for a myriad of reasons. But you're there and you are standing up and you are marching and you are with like-minded people. And even if it's just a small protest, I saw a protest of one man standing up with a sign that said Black Lives Matter, and it warmed my heart. I keep seeing people, naysayers, or I don't know what you would call them, uninformed, unkind, people who say all lives matter. If all lives mattered, we wouldn't be having any of these conversations. Native people would be treated with respect. There wouldn't be a mascot issue. There wouldn't be schools with mascots or logos or sports teams that denigrated and treated us with disrespect. We are still here. We are the present, and our women carry the future within them. Our women carry the future. Remember those words. When you're looking at what's happening in Portland at the Wall of Moms, remember all of the Black mothers who have lost their children to police violence. And I know that Native people we're number one in so many things: culture, honor, so many things. We got the best dancers, but we're also number one in being killed by the police. And it's not something we usually run around saying, "Ooh, we're number one. We get killed more often than you." But right now, we're standing shoulder to shoulder with our Black brothers and our Black sisters and the Black mothers. I don't know how many of you saw the video of George Floyd as he lost his life. He cried out for his mother. He cried out for his mom. The wall of mothers in Portland, most of them were moved by those words. And most of us, most of the mothers here can relate to that. My son's been pulled over multiple times, been targeted. He has long hair, he has dark skin. He gets profiled a lot, and it's heartbreaking. And he's been splayed out on the hood of his car too many times. And they let him go because he hasn't done anything. But our police profiling our brown and our Black people has got to end. Why don't they profile Wall Street employees? Because they rip off the world. Oh, I just don't even know. It cracks me up. Cracks me up. And it makes me laugh because it's so sad. So Portland, with the Wall of Moms, you'll see that they have linked their arms. And I've seen another form of protest where they use plastic tubes and they handcuff themselves together inside the tubes. And so they stand there like that, which is got to be tough on your arms and really challenging when you have to go to the restroom. But it's also an effective way to protest. It's very visual, it's very visceral, makes people think, which is the whole point of being a protester. Make people think. So here's another quote for you. If the white man wants to live in peace with the Indian, he can live in peace. Treat all men alike. Give them all the same law. Give them all an even chance to live and grow. All men were made by the same great spirit chief. They are all brothers. The earth is the mother of all people, and all people should have equal rights upon it. So, what are your thoughts about that? Anyone have any thoughts, any questions? Any comments? Okay, so I will continue. Here's another quote I want to share with you. This is from Sun Bear, who's Chippewa. I do not think the measure of a civilization is how tall its buildings are, of concrete are, but rather how well its people have learned to relate to their environment and fellow man. Right now, as we navigate through coronavirus, we're learning new ways of navigation. I was at the post office this morning, and I watched people open the doors for other people, which I thought was very kind. Unfortunately, both of the people, the person having the door open for them and the person opening the door, and one of whom was elderly, neither one of them had a mask on. And they were strangers. They greeted each other. They smiled. And I thought, oh, what a beautiful moment if that had occurred last year. That it occurs now is kind of heartbreaking because you don't know where either one of those people have been, and you don't know if either one of those people have underlying health conditions. So it's hard to protest against a virus, isn't it? One of the things that we need to think about, and it's actually, I probably should have started with this, is the First Amendment. So we all know as Native people that the Iroquois Confederacy gave the United States democracy. We gave them one person, one vote. What are they doing with it? My husband said that to me once. He had an argument with the neighbor. Well, not an argument. They were talking about how much they loved 45. And one of them said, I wouldn't even mind if he was the dictator as long as it was 45. And so there were two men and my husband standing there. My husband was listening quietly. And then they turned to him and said, what do you think? And he said, I just want to know what you're doing with the democracy that we gave you. We have to remind people that democracy was hard fought for, and that the First Amendment, which says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. Petition the government. Stand up. Speak out. Use your voice. As they say, use your voice even when your voice, speak your truth even when your voice shakes. I think that's attributed to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but I could be wrong. So if someone wants to correct me, feel free. So I can't believe it's 12:49 already. I really got into this, and I hope that you have too. I have a few more things to talk to you about. So you got yelled at. You kept walking, right? You kept walking. Maybe you have some young guns with you who think, we need to really ramp this up. People aren't listening to us. We need to do this and that. And be that voice that brings calm to the storm. Be that voice that protects the people. One of the things that in my effort to prepare for this was all the things that I was thinking about. Okay, how do I tell them this? How do I tell them that? It's vital that we speak up and speak out together. So your protesting doesn't have to be you walking down the street. Your protest can be a letter. Several years ago, there was a T-shirt that was put out by the Gap, and it said "Manifest Destiny," which immediately created a firestorm on Facebook. And I looked at that, and I'll admit it made me angry because that meant genocide to us, and it still does. So what I did is I looked up the address or the email for the Gap online, and I wrote them a letter, and I schooled them. And they wrote me back, and they pulled the T-shirt because I and many other people had expressed displeasure in what they were doing. You can affect change with just a letter. You can affect change with just your voice. And we need your voice. When I was in grad school, I took part in a peaceful protest. There had been several blatantly racist events on campus at my college, and we planned a peaceful protest in front of the football stadium, and we were walking in a circle, and we were totally silent. And this protest had been publicized. Sorry, losing my words. Might need some water here soon. Anyway, it had been publicized. So a letter went out from the NAACP. It went out to the governor. It went out to the senators, the representatives, the state police, the local police, the campus police, the college president. And it said, if anything happens to these students, then we will hold you responsible. Well, thankfully, none of the students were hurt. But what did happen was that we had state police positioned on four sides of us. So there are 4 state police surrounding our circle as we walked, carrying our signs, peacefully protesting. And because I was a known activist, and I had written about this in the college campus paper, I was a opinion columnist at the time for that newspaper. There were in the beginning of the protest. Let me back up a smidge. As we were walking in a circle, people kept walking through to get to the stadium. They would just walk right through our protest. And as time went on, the officers who were quasi protecting us saw that we were being peaceful and that we were not causing problems at all. And so eventually, the police stopped these people from walking through. And I think that there was a coordinated attempt to do what happened next, which was that the police stopped one man from walking through, European American, and I looked over, and literally the officer had his arms around the midsection of that man. The man was still trying to violate that peaceful protest, to barrel through and knock into people. So the officer that was in front of me, he went over to assist the other officer. As soon as he left, a European American woman and 2 European American men, they grabbed her, they shoved her towards me, and she hit me with her fists in the center of my chest. And I used to be a competitive powerlifter, so I can take a shot. I shouldn't have to. My son was behind me. I should have been more prepared. I should have been more alert. I did not think, with all the police there, that this would happen. And a journalist from the local newspaper, Teresa Hogue, was standing there, and her eyes got so big at what she'd just witnessed, but she didn't report on it. It wasn't in the newspaper that I'd been assaulted. And I kept walking. I didn't do anything except be angry inside. You have to stand up, even when it hurts. And how sad that my son had to witness his own mom be assaulted for standing up for justice. But I do not regret it. I will stand up against injustice anytime, anywhere, for anyone experiencing injustice, as should we all. I want to thank you, each and every one of you, for listening in, for taking time to be a part of Native Wellness Power Hour, and for listening about how to be a peaceful protester. Keep walking, keep your head high, and hold up your sign. Share your message. Be the change that you want to see in the world. We have to. If we don't, who will? Just like that wall of moms in Portland and it all across the country. Tommy, thank you for your kind words. Let's all be the change that we want to see in the world. Yeah, my son did see me power through, and my son when I did get to see him socially distancing recently, and he's like, I want to go to, there's a Black Lives Matter protest and I want to go to that. So it's good to see the strength of my ancestors flowing through to my children. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It's really a pleasure and honor to spend some time with you. Gunochish, aho. I wish you, each and every one of you, the best. And we look forward to seeing you at a future Native Wellness Power Hour. Take care.